for it. Yep.
You spoke about me manifesting from when we spoke at the quantum.
Yeah. So what I noticed there was that you were searching for, like when we were at Espens there, you were sort of looking for, you were looking externally for somebody who represented what you would naturally want to be internally. All right. So what was happening, what I noticed was that you were telling me what you didn't want to see rather than what you did want to see. So you said, there's so many of these charlatans, these people, they're not true, they're hypocritical. So you were able to identify what it is that you didn't want to see within people who are leading the community. Okay, so that's a contrast, that's a contrasting experience. Contrast allows us to recognize what we don't want so we can then see what we do want. Okay, but while I focus on what I don't want, then I activate that experience to be placed upon my path. Because life relates to you in the way that you relate to yourself. And life is constantly listening to what you are activating within your energy space. So if I'm constantly saying, look, I don't want this, I don't want that, it's terrible how these people do this, and look at this over here, then life can only hear what you're activating. It can't necessarily read, well, come on, life, can't you see that I don't want this and this is what I do want? So what we need to do is, this physical realm, this fourth density experience, this human existence, is about spiritual growth. But the way that we spiritually grow is through psychological suffering. That is the catalyst. Our psychological suffering is the catalyst of spiritual growth. So when we start to become aware of that, then we go, hang on, I've got some contrast here. I'm actually suffering. This is what I don't want. What I don't want can be seen as valuable in saying, then this is what I do want. And then once we start to focus on what we do want, we then start to activate that more and more in our being. And then life starts to read that and then goes, this is what Damien wants. Whereas if I'm constantly going, this is what I don't want, then life goes, well, he must want more of that because that's what he's activating. So what you were showing me was what you didn't want to see within the world, what you didn't want to see within people. And see, what that was that the opposite of that was what you valued. And it's no wonder what has happened to you recently, because it's what you don't want to see, rather than focusing on what I do want. Yeah. So this is where we use contrast as the opportunity to see what we do want. Because the big question is, and I'll ask everybody here, is that, do you know what you do want in life? You could easily tell me what you don't want. Because you can identify it, because our mind naturally is a fear-based mind. It's naturally going to pick up where there's a lack of, where I'm not enough, where there's not enough, where there's a scarcity of. That's what it wires to. So the mind is very good at telling us what we don't want, but there's another part of the mind that we can also use the prefrontal cortex to go, well, thank you, but what is it that I do want? And this is when we talk about change. Well, what do I want to change to? When Matt was talking about, rather than going to the gym and punishing myself, I changed it to going to the gym so I could then inspire myself and I could use this as a healthy outlet. See how he changed his directorate? Even, like VJ and have conversations. I remember, VJ, we had that conversation about what is it that you want to invite into your world? And VJ went, oh, freedom. I went, okay, that's great. I said, what does that mean? Freedom from toxic relationships. But see how he was still connected to the toxic relationship? I went, well, let's get rid of that. Where do we want to go? Not where we want to get away from. Because while we're attached to where we want to get away from, then that's what we're activating. So VJ would then continue to invite toxic relationships into his world, rather than going, I'd like to have freedom to have more therapeutic, tonic relationships. So don't get caught up in getting away from something, more so think about where do I want to move to? And that's that moving forward and that forever expanding. We need to be really aware of what it is that we're activating within our daily moments. You know, really your quality of life is reflective of your most prominent and dominant thoughts and emotions that you activate in your moments each and every day. So I'll say that again. Your quality of life is reflective of your most prominent and dominant thoughts and emotions that you activate or you invite into your moments each and every day. Because you are vibrating at a particular frequency based upon your thoughts and your emotions. That frequency that you vibrate at is the invitation for life to deliver to you. Now, some people call it the law of attraction. I prefer to call it the law of resonance, that you will only resonate, you can only bring something to you, or you'll resonate with something that is the same frequency that you are. Now, let's go even a step further. Rather than saying that life delivers to you or this law of attraction, you say, no, I'm actually shifting to the reality that is resonating with what I am experiencing. Because this is where we then start to look at quantum physics and the infinite number of potential realities that we could be tapping into. So depending on what my frequency is, I will then move to that reality. There's a thing called the Planck second. The Planck second is the smallest amount of time that we have from a quantum physics perspective. There's 334,000 Planck seconds within 1 of our seconds. It doesn't mean that it's the smallest amount of time, but it's the smallest amount of time that we can measure. 334,000 times we are shifting to different universes, different parallel realities based upon our frequency. Because it's so quick, because there's so many of them that happen within 1 of our second, we can't tell. So you are shifting to alternate realities 334,000 times per second based upon your frequency, which is driven and impacted by your thoughts and emotions. So that's when I say you create your own reality. You not only create your own reality by what I place my attention on, but you create your own reality, physical reality around you through the frequency that you emanate each and every moment. This is why it's really important to become aware of what is it that I am emitting, because I'm not only the receiver, but I'm the transmitter as well. And you're shifting constantly. So your reality at this moment is very different to the reality that you experienced when you first came on to this call, because you're vibrating at a different frequency. Like when I first spoke to you, I could feel your vibration. It was very low because it was caught up in the, this has happened to me. As we've started to have discussions, now it's starting to work out, maybe this is happening for me. Maybe there's some learning in this suffering. Maybe there's some awakening. See how your vibrationary rate starts to increase? You are now experiencing a physical reality that is worlds apart from where you were when you first came onto this call. Right? You can feel the shift because there is a shift. Yeah? This is what we all do. And this is what I mean when we talk about this world as a holographic experience, because we are constantly shifting to particular realities based upon what it is that we're vibrating at that particular time, because you are energy. That is you, that is your form. And when we break everything right down to it, there is actually no matter within us. Even if we look at it from a matter versus space perspective, you are 99.9 to the 12th 6% space compared to 0.0 to the 12th 4% matter. It's amazing you don't fall into yourself. You are made of so much space, but that space is a field. It has a charge. You are the space. That is what you are. That is what consciousness is. You're not a physical body. That's, so start to invite that understanding of who you are, what you are, into your reality more and more. You go, wow, this is really interesting. So when someone calls me a name, what is it that gets upset? Is it the space? No, consciousness cannot be upset. It's the actual physical part of me. Well, what is the physical? Well, it's my mind. Well, even if I look at my mind, it's still space. It's a concept called the ego. You see, the ego likes to attach to something that it thinks is permanent. There is nothing permanent about you. You're constantly changing. You see, this is the age-old conversations around ego and spirituality and coming to an understanding of who it is and what you are. Every experience that you've had, especially what you're experiencing now, this is a great awakening opportunity. You can actually thank your girlfriend or your ex-girlfriend hooking up with somebody else, because what it's doing, it's showing you, it's revealing to you your fear. That's what it's doing. And as it reveals to you your fear, then you can then go, wow, this is really interesting. If it wasn't for her, if it wasn't for that experience, I wouldn't be able to see this part of myself that I haven't seen before. Now there's a fear, I can then start to come to the realization that this fear comes from the thought that there's a separation. Now I can then heal this fear. Now let's go even one step further, is that there's a Hindu parable when they talk about if you're in the jungle and you have a thorn in your side, you need another thorn to take out the original thorn, and then you throw away both thorns. Okay? So what it's saying there is that when I have a suffering, my suffering is attachment to something. Okay? Your suffering is the original thorn. When I come to the awakening of my suffering, and that might be through forgiveness, through realization, the awakening is the second thorn. So then you get both thorns and you throw them away, because ultimately they were both an illusion. Right? So there's the illusion that there was a suffering, and see, now the antidote to the suffering was also an illusion, forgiveness. Because either one naturally wasn't in existence. It was only a construct of the mind that created that so. And this is why the Buddhists and the Hindus call seeing through the illusion of Maya. And this is why in some spiritual circles, people will talk about everything is an illusion. So what you're experiencing at the moment is suffering. You will come to an awakening of that, and then you will then start to realize that both the suffering and the awakening were all an illusion. But I needed to have the suffering to come to the awakening. I need to have the experience to come to an understanding of the experience. See? And that's what this lifetime is about, that I have a physical body, I have a mind, but I am a spirit that inhabits all of this stuff. And that my spiritual growth will be developed via the catalyst of psychological suffering. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's it's quite profound, really, because a lot of stuff you do read just touches the surface of like, it's just an illusion, but it doesn't give you the way you described it and was able to communicate it to be able to.
You need to experience the illusion so you can see that it is an illusion. Yeah, and then you then start to see how the illusion continues to manifest in other areas of your life. And so as we go through this life, you then start to awaken to all of the illusions of the mind. And see, that's awakening, that's enlightenment. When the Buddha said enlightenment is really letting go of suffering. So you have all of these many enlightenment experiences. It's not just one that you go, oh, now I'm enlightened, and then you never ever suffer. So I become enlightened to that illusion. What's the next illusion that I can become enlightened to? But the only way you can become enlightened to it is to have the illusion, to suffer from it, so I can then work out what the antidote is, so I can then awaken to it, to then see it as an illusion. So suffering is not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing either. It's just part of the process of awakening. And so now I can then see my suffering as having purpose. So then I don't mind myself suffering, because I can see that there's a purpose of it. Whereas if I'm going to suffer, make it purposeful, because you're going to suffer anyway. Otherwise, you go, oh, I'm suffering again. Life's terrible. I might just check out this time. You know?
Yeah.
You go, wow, this is interesting. Some more suffering. What can I learn from this? And so once again, we come back to the epigenetics. Here I level up. And so here's another piece of the code that then is released. And as another piece of the code is released, I then have another psychological suffering that's related to the code. And see how you're then continuing to become more and more awakened through your genetic code being released.